I'm going to guarantee something to all of you. You ready? Yeah. I guarantee every person in this room will have problems. You will have problems. I promise you will. And you may wonder, well, how can you be sure, Dan? Well, it's really simple. I've been watching you. None of you is dead. Dead people have no problems. The rest of us, it's kind of good to know we have problems, isn't it? In other words, a part of life is recognizing that when we have really big objectives, we're going to face big obstacles. The bigger your goals, the bigger the challenges you're going to face. Does that make sense? So what some people do in life is they set really small goals. That way they don't have any problems. But then they reach a point in the middle of their life when they're very frustrated and very disappointed with where they are, and suddenly they realize they have a really big problem. So eventually we're going to face problems. What I admire about you is you have such huge goals, and so we need to be prepared to deal with some huge problems. Now let's talk about how people sometimes try to deal with problems that's not effective. One strategy is to pretend there's no problem. There's no problem. There's no problem. Well, sometimes there's a problem. For example, how many of you will be driving this summer? Keep your hand up if you think you'll have car trouble. Yes, you will. 100% of you will have car trouble. So let's say you're driving down the road and your car's going slower and slower, and finally it stops. The front begins to shake, and the motor flies out. Well, the ridiculous person would say, I positively believe my motor did not explode. That is not a positive attitude. That's an idiot mental attitude, all right? Clearly, you no longer have a car. You have a coaster. It works well going down hills, you know, and that's about it. So pretending it's not a problem is not a good solution. How many of you are familiar with the huge bird called the ostrich? Really long neck. What does it do when faced with a problem? Puts its head in the sand, right? So if I just can't see the problem, it's not a problem. And then some jackal comes and gets a bit of ostrich steak for lunch that day and realizes that putting your head in the sand is not a good solution. How many of you know people that can look at a bad situation and make it worse? Yeah, many people are great at that. And here's how they do it. Attention, this is bad. This is bad. Everybody, let's talk about how bad it is. You want to just walk up and say, come here, buddy. Listen, I can see. Shut up. So it doesn't make any sense to say, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, when the whole universe can see that it's bad. So what I want to try to share is a philosophy of dealing with problems. It's an important skill in life because you're going to face lots of obstacles. First of all, realize it's okay when you're faced with a disappointment or an obstacle to feel a bit of frustration. It's okay to go, Of all the situations I might have chosen for myself today, this one was not on the list. But it's okay because I'm way better at handling it than the average human being. You know, it's okay to go, for about a second and a half. Everybody try that. Okay, now we're over that. And then immediately say to yourself, there's something in this that could be good. There's something in this that might be great. And there could even be something wonderful. This is good, this is great, and this is what? Wonderful. Because how many of you have learned in your past when you faced a huge problem, later you realized there was good that came from that? There almost always is. And so when we're faced with a really big challenge, first of all we say, okay, over that. Something in this is good, something's great, could be something wonderful, and come up with 3 reasons it's good. Now, this is why it's important. It's not hard to come up with the first reason. By the time you get the second one, you've calmed down a little bit and you've quit going, and you start thinking. And the third reason, you start laughing a little bit. And have you ever noticed that when you have a sense of humor in a tough situation, it goes better? Have a sense of humor. And I'm going to share with you one of the dumbest things I did my first summer so that you don't do this. My turf had canals. You all have seen canals, they carry water away. But back in the day, people didn't clean the canals. They would use them for garbage. So they would throw lots of garbage, they would throw food, they would throw household pets that had died, and motor oil and tires. They were really bad things. And when the sun would hit all this stuff, it would begin to kind of merge together into the horrible brown and green I can only call it slime or sludge. I mean, it was horrible stuff. And like a really brilliant guy, I got to the edge of the canal and I said, I think I can just go through the canal. There's a bridge, but it's far away. I want to go to those other houses. You know what's happening next, don't you? So I put myself into the canal, so far so good, and suddenly I hit my foot on a slippery spot, and I went, phew, and I slid, and I fell into the biggest pool of slime, mud, garbage you can imagine. And when I hit, it splashed all over me, up my side, into my face, across my hair. And the aroma was alluring, as you might imagine. And I remember standing in the canal and I said, oh, I have a problem. And remembering my sales school training, I said, this is bad, horrible, and totally sucks. There's nothing positive in this at all. There's not one good thing about this. I can't sell books like this. I stink. I smell horrible. I got to change clothes. I remember just standing in this canal smelling terrible. And I said, okay, calm down. All right, I'm not going to go back to the HQ. But I can't go knock. I'm not going back. But I can't go forward. I refuse to quit. But I can't go on. And much later, a man named Charlie Tremendous Jones taught me that when you can't go forward, but you refuse to quit, is when you grow. You can't go forward, but you refuse to quit, is when you grow. And so eventually I calmed down and I said to myself, brain, get working, think a little, think a little. I said, okay, I could use a friend right now. And I looked over my pre-approach and I remembered meeting a really cool mom that morning. She didn't buy anything, gave me the husband objection, but she was really nice. And I thought, I have nothing to lose. So I went back to her home and I knocked on her door again, turned so that the clean side was toward the door. And when she answered the door, she said, young man, I told you I need my husband's opinion. And I said, I know that. I just wonder if you like this view or if you prefer this view. And I showed her my awful mess. And she just went, oh, you fell in the canal, didn't you? My children are always playing in that canal. I tell my children, don't play in the canal, and they play in the canal anyway. What's wrong with you? Get in here. So she invited me in, and I went, and she went, oh. And I said, I know. And she said, and you go to university? And I said, yes, Harvard. She said, don't move. And she came back a few minutes ago with some jeans and a shirt. She said, these are my husband's, they might fit you. And I changed, and yes, they did fit me. And she said, I will try to clean these clothes, stay out of the canal, and come back tonight. I said, yes, ma'am. So I finished my day, and when I got back that night kind of late, she said, okay, I've managed to clean your clothes. And I said, that's a miracle, thank you. And then she said, and are you hungry? And I said, always. She said, we saved you some dinner because I really want my husband to see those books. So I'm doing the eat demo thing. You get good at this after a while. And the husband said, well, honey, they look okay to me. Why don't we take them? And I went, really? And he said, yeah, and son, I've heard you had a pretty tough day today in the canal. Why don't I give you a ride home? And I went, where am I? Disney World? You know, this is like, what? The coolest family I met my whole first summer, and it was on my worst day. I have told my student manager so many times over the last 40 years how much he changed my life. Because he's the first person that taught me, when you have a problem, don't ignore it, don't pretend it doesn't exist, use your brain. The way I used to solve problems in university was like most students do. I'd go to sleep. You know people like that, don't you? Oh, I have a lot of studying to do. I better go to sleep. I got this huge relationship problem. I need to sleep a long time. What he taught me was when you're faced with a difficult challenge, breathe, think, and say, there's something good in this. Let me get busy on a solution. And that lesson will stick with you the rest of your lives. So if you're taking notes, I'm going to tell you the key to dealing with special situations. It's one word. You ready for it? T-H-I-N-K. T-H-I-N-K, which spells? Think. Yeah. Some of you are going, oh, wow, man, what a concept. I'm going to write that down. Huh? I'm going to try that someday. Yeah. In other words, think. Use common sense. Use your brain. A few years back, I had a chance to go to San Antonio on a business trip. I went to look up where I was. That is the actual canal that I fell in. It's been cleaned up since then, but you can imagine how innocent that looks. Don't go in. It's a problem if you do that. Was this helpful, what we're talking about? So the rule of thumb for handling special situations is think. Use common sense, be sensitive, and treat people the way you'd like your mom to be treated. And that'll work really well for you.